Discover the best. Hey guys, you're watching Force Forward. This is ForceBrands' forward-leaning business series. Today, I'm really excited to be joined with Ayeshah Abuelhiga. She's the founder and CEO of Mason Dixie Foods. Hey, Ayeshah.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Rebecca.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive right in. I find your story so interesting because you didn't set out to create this breakthrough product, right? But you knew you were onto something given the popularity of it with your restaurant biscuits. So tell me a little bit more about the backstory and what inspired you to set out to create Mason Dixie Foods.
So I always tell people it was a happy accident. Ended up being in our restaurant field. We were actually in an 8x10 food stall in a food hall. So it was an 80 square foot stall, wasn't a lot of room. We had biscuits stacked to the ceiling and we would still sell out by noon every day. So I'll never forget the Sunday where we had a regular customer who would come on the weekdays, and for the first time ever, of course, on this particular Sunday, he comes when we were about to sell out at 10:30 in the morning. It was an insane brunch. And he was just like, oh, well, why can't you just sell me the dough? Why can't you sell me the dough? And I was just like, oh, I don't really have a way to do that, sir. Just let me see if we can maybe make another batch. We're trying to like save face there. And then the funny thing is that same day, another woman comes by and she's another regular, and she was maybe more nicer about it and said, bummer that, you guys are out, but I've actually never had your biscuits fresh out of the oven because remember, it was an 8x10 stall. We had no infrastructure. We were reheating them in a little toaster oven and baking them in the morning at a commissary like a mile away. And she was like, it would be really nice to just know what these things are like straight out of the oven. I was like, oh, okay, this is not like 2 in a row. So that night I go back to the commissary and I just take some of the dough pucks that were being produced. I threw them on a baking sheet, put them in the freezer, despite what my chef was saying. He's like, you're going to ruin the integrity of the product. And I was like, oh, well, we'll just try it. So threw it in the freezer the next day, baked them off, and they baked off amazingly. They puffed up so much better because the butter was so cold. So it was like the perfect biscuit. And I was like, I got to get these to the customer. So went to Bed Bath & Beyond to get a food saver machine for $100 because I knew that I couldn't put them in a Ziploc bag because I'd get flagged by like the health department. So vacuum seal these things, put in marker what the flavor was, and the next day put them in an igloo cooler and went to market. And I'll never forget, my chef calls me at like 9:30 in the morning. He's like, hey, are you still around? Can you grab more biscuits? And I'm thinking the sandwich biscuits. I'm like, Jesus, we just sold out of them at 10:30 on Sunday. And now you're telling me we're out again. He's like, no, like the frozen ones. We're out of the frozen ones. So I was like, oh my God, people were literally going out of their way on their way to work to get these things. So I was like, there's something to be said about it, but I had no idea what to do with them, right? We still had this whole dream of opening this restaurant. So I was like, this in my mind, this could have been a nice to have. It was like a better version of a tchotchke over a t-shirt, right? But it just kind of took off. And then, fast forward a couple months later, we were secret shot by the regional marketing manager at Whole Foods. And she was like, I got to have these. My son's eaten all of the ones I brought home. I need more samples. Can you come and drop them off at headquarters? And when she took them out of the box and started merchandising them, and I was like horrified because please don't put those things there. I was like, oh, let me get a box. Let me make it really nice. And, 9 months later when we launched in our first Whole Foods, we outsold butter and milk that day. We sold through 150 boxes in 3 hours. And that's when I knew this was going to be a lot bigger than just a tchotchke at the restaurant.
Yeah. And I find that so interesting because the year was 2015 when you launched in Whole Foods. And that was a time when, this national grocery chain wasn't necessarily in the market for baked goods, frozen baked goods. Oh. So what made the timing so ideal for this? And why was it such a hit?
Well, one, I think emerging brands, remember back, like you said, back then there wasn't, New Hope or ForceBrands with these awesome videos, right? Telling people how to get a business started. It was literally me on dialine.com trying to figure out how to make a package happen. So there wasn't a lot. So there was white space for everything, like everything. One. Two, we were entering into Whole Foods at a really interesting time. This is pre-Amazon. They were freshly, or I think looking for investment at that time, and trying to scale Whole Foods to include like 365 stores. They were really looking at ways to get more conventional shoppers into a Whole Foods, not just, feeding into the typical organic, earthy, crunchy vibe, right? And I think it really took, big thinkers like our marketing manager who saw a bigger vision for frozen. She had successfully piloted another effort with the frozen team at Whole Foods in Mid-Atlantic on a gelato brand, and it had done really well, and it had the same core premise that we do, right? Like real ingredients, no BS, clean label, but also really innovative, artisanal, restaurant-oriented flavor profiles. And that was something missing in the ice cream market at the time. So that was hugely successful. And so they were like, okay, if we could find another local brand to do this off of, what would it be? It just so happened to be a biscuit company. And, we were getting all this buzz with the restaurant. So it complemented when this product launched on the shelf. So I think having the retail presence in terms of a restaurant storefront, and the brand being out there as being a quintessential, the best biscuit in DC, I think really triggered a chain reaction in the consumer seeking it out. And complementary wise, for Whole Foods taking the risk to bring on a product like us and facilitate that. They did a great job. We had marketing programs that they did. It was like Foodie of the Month Club used to be this cool thing they did when they were still pre-Amazon. They were more locally driven. They skinned the freezer doors. They put up posters. They did a newsletter. It was really a well-cultivated marketing opportunity that, doesn't exist today anymore, but I think is really what fueled, a lot of the fire back then.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to ask, how did you approach brand discovery? Obviously, consumers knew about these biscuits. They knew where to find them now, but what about those new consumers? So I like that you hit on that. And you've also chosen to innovate laterally, meaning you're sticking to one category, you're sticking to frozen, you're committed to it, which I love. So tell us more about the opportunity in frozen baked goods right now.
I'd say in frozen food in general, right? The best preservative we have, ask your grandmother, ask your great-grandmother, right, was an ice box. And for some reason, over the course of the last 30 years, that got really militarized, and, supply chain challenges and cheaper routes to places caused these companies to start taking cheap solutions to what doesn't need a preservative. And so now an aisle that really is a natural preservative is full of stuff that has no natural in them. And I think, for us, bread was one of those places. Honestly, one day I'd like to impact bread at every channel, not just frozen, because it is so horrifying. If you're going to do bread and it's going to be frozen, it should be as fresh as possible. It should be the same, experience that you get in a restaurant. Most restaurant chains are buying frozen dough and they're pulling them into their ovens and cooking them for you as a consumer. So to me, it should be the freshest bread in the store. And so that's, I think, why we just decided to focus on it. There's tons of bread we still haven't made yet. There's lots of opportunity there, and it's still a core item. And the average American household purchases 5 loaves of bread a week still. So there's still a lot of work to be done in there. And I think for us, this year, catapulting into frozen breakfast was really important too, because that's in the average day parts in America, the number one time where consumers are consuming bread. So to us, if we're going to impact change, we got to also get the people that are eating it on a regular basis and where they're eating it in breakfast. So that's why we launched scones and our sweet rolls into market as well.
Awesome. And tell me a little bit more about, so you are a female founder, you're a daughter of immigrants, you have a unique background, and how are you working to help promote diversity and inclusion within this industry?
I love that question. Perfect timing. Because a couple of weeks ago, we just launched into fruition an initiative called Project Potluck. I'm very proud of it. I'm a co-founder alongside Ibrahim and Arnulfo of Beanfields and a dozen cousins. And for us, it's all about building visibility to people that look and have a very similar story to the three of us, right? Being first generation or being first to graduate college with, parents of color. And obviously for me, I'm a double whammy. I always joke I'm also a woman. So there's a lot of nuance there too that we're trying to address. But for us, that initiative is really important. It's helping to grow visibility for people of color in this industry. And then beyond that, the three of our companies, and especially Mason Dixie, I always tell people it's minority run, operated, owned, the whole nine. Diversity for us is not a program, it's a guarantee. It's not an option. We search high and low to make sure that we find the best people for the job, regardless of background, regardless of experience. I'm really proud too. We have several members of our team that were actually restaurant employees that proved themselves and climbed that ladder and did it right. And I always wish I had those same opportunities to just do my job right and move up in the world. So we make sure that we also offer those same opportunities to people that may not have a Harvard degree, but have grit, have stamina, have the opportunity to sell their hearts out and live and breathe the brand like we want them to.
I love it. And we're big fans of Project Potluck here at ForceBrands. So congrats. I'm super excited to help promote it.
Big supporters.
And great to have you on as well. And of course, diversity and inclusion has been such an ongoing narrative of 2020. And I do want to we'd be remiss not to touch upon COVID-19. And how has this global pandemic really impacted not only the business, but I guess the greatest lessons you've learned? And I hate to use the word pivot, but how have you kind of changed your thinking as a leader during this time?
Well, I think it's forced many of us companies to be more agile than ever. You don't think that startups need to be that way, but they do. I mean, you take advantage of the fact that you have a central meeting point, right? That everything's in the closet and that people know where things are. I mean, during the height of the pandemic, I was like a human inventory machine. I was like, Lauren's got the boxes and Eric's got the dry ice powder. It was logistics chaos. But, I also learned that I have the most amazing team on earth. I mean, we launched a new co-manufacturer relationship in the midst of the pandemic. We were able to make every sales meeting that we wanted happen. We had buyers' addresses and we're shipping product all over the country, new products that hadn't even been seen yet, and everyone did their part. And we, at the same time too, we're launching 2 new products. So we're still optimizing formulations and stuff in our home kitchens, don't underestimate these startups that, they just, you have this power of people being much more gritty and not limited by whether or not they have, a 4x4 office to go to every day. They're making stuff happen. So that I think was one of the biggest things I learned about my team. Not that I didn't already know they were amazing, but I didn't know they were superheroes, right? They absolutely murdered it. And then on top of that, COVID's been really bittersweet, but bitter in that, a lot of these retailers are still struggling to this day to keep up with demand and the surge. But for us, it was sweet in that there's been a lot of focus and visibility on the frozen category like never before. Categories that were historically down are now up. Historically, our category, frozen bread, has been down a couple points a year. We have always been the hero with, 100 plus points up. But now that the category is up 15, 16 points, we're up 500%. So it's astronomical. And with the great thing for emerging brands in the frozen category was that there was a lot of brand discovery because their go-tos were out of stock. Thank goodness. And, so they went in and said, okay, I'll try this one. And they're like, oh my God, why haven't I had this before? So the trial upticks have been unbelievable. And the loyalty that we've gained through the process has been unbelievable. And I think it's what's really helping us grow as a brand as we explore more products and categories. So, while it had its challenges, I think the lasting impact is that, frozen's here to stay. I think there's a new fervor around it. And I also think that more than ever, emerging brands are critical. We're the ones bringing you the new flavors of the week, the new cool stuff, the new everything. And on top of that, we're bringing brands. So there's a story there and people want to be a part of that. Now that they have more time to eye shop, they really are researching you and they want to know who they're investing their dollar into. Right? So this is the time, I think, for anyone in the emerging brands consumer products categories.
And I love what you mentioned about your team having such grit. It's so true. I mean, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. I've always believed it, and COVID
That's totally right.
certainly proved that. And because this is a Force Forward, I do want to talk about forward leaning, looking ahead, what the future of Mason Dixie Foods looks like. So give us a peek.
It's a big one. We have a big innovation that's launching next spring that I think is a total game changer. That we love to play David to every Goliath, and we're doing it again next year in a very big way. We've successfully closed a Series A round at now 5.3 million. So very exciting times for us as we grow our team and we grow our capabilities internally. So there may be a lot more opportunities. Stay tuned to ForceBrands for more. That's, to me, I think building a bigger, diverse team is a huge win for us that we can't wait to continue to evolve and all the new products moving forward. I think, our goal this winter is really to make sure that people are buying Mason Dixie as their holiday bread item. So imagine what that's going to do for the rest of our time together. So looking forward to the growth.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to following it. Thank you so much, Ayeshah. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Such fans of the brand, and it seems like you've had a prosperous year, all things considered. So
yes, thank you.
Look forward to the positive momentum. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Rebecca. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.